everyone, welcome back to the Teradek Show. I'm Megan with AbelCine, and I'm hosting the next hour with Jason Crothers. Thank you, Jason, for being here with me.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
And our subject today is modern lighting. We're going to cover a lot of the new products that are out there and also products that you're using on your current show, Chicago Fire. Jason is the director of photography for Chicago Fire that shoots out of the Chicago location. And I know you've been the DP there for the last 2 seasons?
Correct. We just wrapped, about a week and a half ago, we wrapped season 5. So I took over the show beginning of season 4.
So you wrapped that show, flew to Vegas.
Correct. I wrapped the show, took a few hours of sleep, and then decided to come to Vegas for NAB.
So I know before Chicago Fire, you were also operating on second unit?
Correct. So I started on the show season 2.
Okay.
Coming aboard doing as their second unit DP, and then also doing B camera. And then at the beginning of, towards the end of season 2, Lisa Wiegand, who was the original DP, got very sick towards the end of season 2, so she ended up missing an episode that I ended up shooting, which then led to season 3 shooting about every 3rd or 4th episode, season 3. And so when she decided not to come back for season 4, producer asked me to take over the show.
So what was that like, taking over the show?
Actually a pretty smooth transition. I mean, because second unit on Chicago Fire, second unit, we call it second unit, but it's not what traditionally like second unit is. Inserts or establishing shots, or maybe just the stunt stuff.
Right.
Because of the size of our show, it's, quote unquote second unit's really just an extension of first unit. So second unit is fully staffed in the same way that the first unit is.
Right, full-fledged.
It's basically an entirely separate first unit, and they're not shooting inserts or establishing shots. Main unit with me, I might be off shooting something on the burn stage, shooting people running through fire, while the second unit might be off shooting an 8-page dialogue scene with 10 of the cast members.
Right.
So second unit's really just an extension of first unit, and because I'd shot 8 or 9 episodes between season 2 and 3 already, that making that transition and taking over the show was actually very simple.
Nice.
And we've kept pretty much the entire, I'd say 98% of the crew has stayed consistent season to season. So it's also easy to come in and go, I've got a great shorthand with these people, so moving forward is like, well, it's the same crew doing the same thing we've been doing for the previous 400 days, so taking over was very simple.
Right. So we'll talk a little bit about the schedule too. I know people will want to know about that, how you keep things fresh. But one thing I wanted to ask you, we've seen a lot of new trends in lighting technology in the last, couple of years, where the move towards LED lights, lightweight lights. So I kind of wanted to get your take on, are there things that you're able to do now with lighting that maybe you couldn't do long ago?
I've had a discussion a couple of times. I think LED lighting is LED lighting the benefit of LED light, especially LED lighting, which I think is the biggest change in lighting nowadays, is twofold: of creative, but also just practical in terms of time and money. And it's sort of like the snake eating its own tail. Like those two things feed into each other constantly. Right. So I always, when people ask, like, well, really, what's the benefit of LED lighting? Like, why? Because our show, I'd say, is about at least 50% of our show is all LED lighting, if not more. And I jokingly refer to it as the 2-minute curse, which is every time you do a setup, inevitably you always look at you do a lineup, you do a rehearsal, and the AD says you're ready to shoot, and you always go, I just need 2 minutes. And you never say 1 minute because everyone knows you're lying. And you don't say 5 minutes because everybody freaks out and knows, oh my God, 5 minutes, and the actors go back to the trailers. So you say 2 minutes. And maybe it actually is 2 minutes. But I started thinking about this where if, in our show, on average, we do about 40 setups a day. And those are 40 lighting setups. And just doing the math, you go, well, if I take an extra 2 minutes of little adjustments for each setup, that means every day I'm burning somewhere between an hour to maybe an hour and a half. And if you want to be conservative, so let's just say it's an hour, but on a TV schedule where you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8 pages a day, often with 1 or 2 company moves, an hour is a monumental amount of time. And over the course of the week, that's 5 hours. Over the course of a month, that's 20 hours. So now that's a day and a half of just, the 2-minute curse. And a lot of that comes in, you're lining something up, you're doing a close-up, for example, and you go, well, I want it to be just a little bit warmer, and I need like an extra third of a stop. If you're using a tungsten source or you're using a Kino flow, then that involves a crew member coming to set and adding a piece of gel to a light, or pulling a scrim, or adding a scrim, or maybe moving the light a little bit. It's quick. We've got an amazing crew, so those changes really are 1 to 2 minutes, but it's still 2 minutes.
Right.
Whereas with an LED light, we can look at that. Now I know I need to make an adjustment, but I can look at the AD and go, no, we're good to go, because then I can turn on my walkie and go, great, change that unit by 600 degrees and then bump up 10%. And so I can immediately make those changes. Or, we started using Sputniks the last month or two of our show. And the same thing, like now you've got new color possibilities. That can all be controlled wirelessly from my iPad. Right. So in some cases, we're getting to a point now where I just go back to my monitor cart, the iPad sitting right there. I just, if I wanted to, just go back there and bypass even giving anybody notes and just arbitrarily go, you know what, I'm going to make a little adjustment here.
Right.
So suddenly there's no longer that 2-minute curse. While they're rolling sound, I could be making that adjustment very quickly.
Right. So the sources are more versatile.
Immensely,
right?
Yeah. They're immensely versatile. Like being able to, it's no longer a matter of going like, is it a tungsten source or is it a daylight source and adding gels. Now I can make whatever adjustments I need to, and I can make very minute, very specific, nuanced changes.
Right.
And the same thing in terms of intensity. It's no longer going, am I going to add a half trim or am I going to add a single or a double? It's now going like, which makes it a little more complicated because now there's a new learning curve of every light's different. So 10% on this light is 3 different stops on this light. So it's also now it's a little bit like relearning certain units and going, all right, go up 10%. Oh wait, no, that's this light. We're using this light, so it'll go up 1%.
Right.
But again, making minute changes like that is and again, that metaphor of the snake kind of eating itself that saves enormous time on set.
Right.
Well, enormous time means either I've got time to do more setups for the director, or it means I've saved that time so later in the day I can spend more time finessing things.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, just TV is the schedule's so long. Sometimes it's just nice for the crew to be able to go home half an hour earlier.
Right. So more efficient.
Yeah, it's more efficient. And again, the more efficient you can be, the more creative you can be. Because now it's if I'm always looking at the AD going, no, we can shoot. But if I actually need 5 minutes, later on go, I need 5 minutes. Well, now it's like, okay, well, you're so efficient that no one's going to balk at 5 minutes. Whereas if you're always going, I need 5 minutes, I need 2 minutes, at some point someone's going to go, no, we got to shoot.
Right.
So it's, and I think that's something that's come out from just LEDs, is how efficient they can be, and how you can, and creatively, how you can now make very minute, nuanced changes to things.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capabilities that we're seeing with the iPad apps and being able to modify. Because sometimes I think when those announcements are made, not everyone thinks that they'd be used like in high-end production.
It's interesting. I think they have 2 applications. One is either being able to make adjustments. And again, this is just my personal taste. I like I like to try to keep as much stuff, equipment, and personnel off the set as possible.
Right.
Just less cluttered, better for the actors. So the more I can light from through windows, or the fewer units I can have on the set, the better. And so if I'm making changes, being able to go, well, the changes I need to make are to color or intensity.
Right.
I don't wirelessly. I don't have to have somebody on set doing that now. I can do that. Like I said, I can do that standing outside the set. I can do that, sitting at my monitors. But beyond that, if you've got lights, rigged up into the ceiling, whether they're top lights or if you've got edge lights, suddenly being able to go, oh, I want that to be a little brighter, a little darker. Being able to just, stand there and make the adjustment through an iPad rather than, traditionally someone comes in with a ladder, gets up there, is making the adjustment, adding a scrim.
Right.
Be able to do that again. It may only save 90 seconds, but it's 90 seconds saved. And if I can, over the course of the day, those 90 seconds add up very quickly.
Right. Well,
so
time is very important.
I mean, again, it's production to production, but I think LED, the ability to do things wirelessly is enormously useful if the production can support that.
And I know you have obviously stages as well, so you have sets that are already there and rigged out. But then Chicago Fire does a lot of location shooting.
A lot of location work.
Every episode has multiple incidences of events that happen. So it's a different show in a way because of that, right? So I imagine you have to constantly kind of be on your toes about what the new location's going to be
very much.
Like.
We do 8 days per episode. And I'd say we're probably on stage 2.5 days per episode, and the rest of it's all on location.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's a big, it's what makes the show fun and interesting. Is every week you're going, great, we have all new locations.
Right.
And they're usually one-offs. It's not like occasionally you'll have a location you're going to return to for a 3 or 4 episode arc. But a lot of them are, we're going to show up here, we're going to be here for 4 or 5 hours for this one scene, and then we're never going to come back here. So part of the challenge and the fun is coming and going, it's a new location.
Right.
Every location is like it's a bit of like a puzzle. You're like, all right, well, if I put a light there, it's going to create a problem here. And what works, what doesn't work.
Right.
So part of the fun and the challenge is coming in and going, how do we've got maybe 20 minutes to do our lighting setup, so how do we make this work?
Right.
And part of the benefit of LEDs is because LEDs are most of the LEDs are so small that suddenly there's lighting possibilities that weren't really possible earlier.
Right.
Where you're going
as
like,
far as where you can fit them.
Exactly. Where you're like, it's like, well, I need a little bit of light here. It's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to, I can bring a light and try to bounce, but it becomes this whole thing. Or we can go, oh, great. Or we've got a 200 watt, a Celebrity 200,
right.
which is the size of basically like a 2x2 Kino. And go, great, we can put that in the corner, and it's a soft source. We can adjust the color to whatever we want. We can dial in the brightness, and we can cram it and hide it places.
Right.
So LEDs, especially in Chicago, because Chicago, it's a beautiful city, but oddly, because of all the giant architecture, most locations are actually very, very small.
Right. Tiny apartments.
They're very cramped. So when you get in there, and you start putting 2 cameras and crew members and boom, and you start getting everybody crammed in there, you go, well, there's no more damn room to do anything with. So LEDs have suddenly created a lot of possibilities of like, oh, we can actually do a lot now in these tiny little spaces that I think would be time prohibitive without LEDs.
Exactly. One thing I think maybe the viewers would also benefit from hearing from is you're a multi-camera show.
Yes.
Right? Two cameras all the time and possibly 3. Is that right?
It depends. It's because our show is predominantly handheld, and it's a very active camera. So it's usually a wide angle zoom. It's all zoom lenses. It's a wide angle zoom, usually very close to the action. And just the way we shoot our show is that camera, it's very rarely just this. It's this, and it's going to pull somebody back. It'll swing around 180 degrees. You see somebody else.
Right.
And so we're doing a lot of different shots, kind of tying things together. I would say about 60% of the time we do single camera, just because there's nowhere for the other camera to be.
Right. The effects.
And so it becomes we can do this, and the B camera's going. Well, there's nowhere for a B camera to go. That's not going to be in the way of the A camera.
Right.
But outside of that, then we're always, the other 40% of the time, it's 2 cameras all the time. And then especially this past season, as the incidents, things blowing up and trucks rolling over and all the other stuff we do on a weekly basis, as those get bigger and bigger, we'll start bringing out a 3rd camera. And I think even this season at one point, we had a big 4-show crossover. We had 4 cameras for this giant night exterior warehouse explosion burning. So we had 4 cameras running for a night exterior.
So when you scout, you constantly are thinking of, here's where all these cameras are going to capture this action, so your lighting design.
Yeah, it's again, just because of the nature of the show and how big things are and how fast things are.
Right.
We never really have a shot list going in, so we show up at a location. A lot of the lighting becomes, a lot of the choices in the scout and the lighting becomes what might happen. Right. So you kind of look and go, well, architecturally, I think this is the most interesting thing. So it's probably a good bet that the director's going to want to do this.
Right.
But he or she might also want that, and they might want that. If they turn around and do that, so you kind of start putting things into place for options. Going, all right, we're going to put a light here. We may never use it, but if we do a shot here, then we're prepared.
Right.
So you kind of end up lighting. It's kind of being on the offense of going, I'm not entirely sure what may or may not happen. What the blocking might change. The actors might want to change the blocking. Okay. So you end up starting kind of doing a pre-rig and roughing what your lighting might be based on what might happen.
Right.
And just kind of taking educated guesses about the nature of the scene. If it's a director we've worked with before, this past season I think we only had 2 or 3 new directors. So all the other directors I'd worked with before in previous seasons. So I kind of had a feel for, like, I know this director likes to do this director likes to do that.
Right.
So it's taking some very educated guesses really about what you think might happen, and on the day going, oh, great, I'm really glad we put that there. And other times going, all right, guys, we can take that down because we're never going to need that.
Right.
But yeah, it's also looking at how to do things quickly, and also going like, all right, if we have a crane, like where can we start putting things, anticipating where the crane might be going.
Right.
So it's kind of reverse engineering from what might happen.
So you're basically learning to be flexible all the time.
TV is very much about flexibility. It's very much, I learned very quickly, if you're not flexible all the time in every way, that ball is going to roll right over you.
Right.
So yeah, it's very much about being flexible. It's very much about trying to have as many options as possible.
And as you're saying, the lighting technology that we're using and you're using is helpful for that ability to be flexible. So the other thing I was thinking of, just as you were talking about that, so as your director switched out in TV, right, does that mean on your scout actually something I don't know. Are those directors with you on that scout?
So, because our show doesn't, we usually, this is actually the first season we've only done, we did 22 episodes this season. Usually we do 23. And we don't rotate DP, so I do every episode. So my entire prep consists of the one tech scout day, which is usually, depending on the episode, it's usually 1 to 2 days before the episode actually shoots.
Okay.
So oftentimes, and on those days, I'll take that day off to go tech scout with the director, and the second unit DP will take over and shoot that day.
Right.
If it's a new director, if it's a director I've worked with before, then I've already got a bit of a shorthand with them. If it's a new director, oftentimes that might actually be the very first time I've met that director of, get on the bus and go, oh, I don't know who you are. You must be the director.
Right.
And in 48 hours, I'm going to be shooting with you.
Right.
And then it becomes like a 10-hour whirlwind of let's run through the location,